Hello, this is Charlie Cipher from Camfil, USA. Camfil is a part of Camfil Sweden, which is an air filter and product manufacturing company that is the largest worldwide for those types of products. I'm Charlie Cipher, and I'm the Marketing and Technical Materials Manager, and I'm based out of Riverdale, New Jersey, which is just outside of New York City, and is our headquarters for North America, for North, South America, and of course I'm putting Canada in there. What I want to talk a little bit about today is data centers, something that we're dealing almost every minute of our lives without even realizing it, because we're all using iPhones, we're all using iPads, we're all using computers, even when we're using our televisions, that's connected to a data center, so it has an effect on almost virtually everything that touches our lives. Without the data centers that I'm going to talk about, we wouldn't have some of these wonderful tools, and technology would probably move back maybe 50 years, and we'd be talking with 2 cups and a string again. Anyway, I'm going to talk about some of the ones that happen every day, but maybe people don't think about. Probably the biggest one right now is Google. I mean, we're all familiar with it. Google has actually become a verb. People use it in everyday conversation. Of us, we couldn't live without Google. I mean, honestly, I turn my computer on in the morning, and the first thing that pops up is a Google search screen. Another thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is Facebook. Many of us have Facebook relationships. Some people 200, 300, 400 friends. Some people have 1,000 friends. It's a new way of communication. It's a new way of meeting people. I'll also talk a little bit about Intel, and of course you can't talk about computers without talking about Microsoft. The real long and short of it is you probably can't drive any place within an urban area or semi-rural area and go 5 miles without driving past the data center. They're just not recognizable from the outside of the building. Normally they don't have windows. In my area, in the northeastern part of the country, they're kind of brick buildings. I'm not really sure what they are in the southeast, but they're probably along the same lines. They typically want to protect them from harsh weather, and of course they've got to keep them properly heated and air conditioning, which is also where the filters come into play. Google, as an example, has some enormous data centers, and they're worldwide. Often we think of Google as just being something associated with the United States, but they've got extremely large data centers in Ireland, in Europe, and different locations throughout the world. I mean, it's nothing right now to send an email or to be on a conference call through your computer. And many times I'm on a conference call with Sweden, and it's just like they were right down the street when I'm talking to them. Well, all that information is being filtered through these Google facilities. Facebook is another one. And as an example, when you hit that button and you send something to 230 of your friends, in many cases, they're getting that little bleep on their iPhone or that bleep on their iPad, or if they're sitting at their computer, that little window is popping up. So the amount of data going through the wires that's related to Facebook is just unbelievable. Intel is still in that mix too, although they're primarily a chip manufacturer. Their data centers are enormous, and they're more used on the commercial side than they are what we call the consumer side. Google covers it all. As a matter of fact, one thing I'll talk about at the end is some of the things that Camfil has in relation to availability. Anyway, Intel is extremely big. Microsoft also runs data centers. The new version that everybody's been using over the last year or so, enormous amount of data movement, and of course all of these companies promote their cloud systems. And in the end, we're all kind of tied together. In the company that I work with, I have 4 or 5 people that I'm intimately tied with as part of my job, and we just share files, and I'm not sure where they are. They're out there in the cloud someplace, but in the real world, they're probably sitting on a data center in Europe because that's where we're based out of. So data centers are part of our everyday life. In many cases, these can be enormous facilities, and they have one extreme need. They need to keep that equipment running cool. In some cases, they're using enormous amounts of ventilation air, which could be bringing in contaminants from the outside that can do damage to the components within these data centers, or they're using air conditioning, and the air conditioning, because of the huge volumes of air that are being moved through these data centers, needs to be protected because dirt on an air conditioning coil causes loss of heat transfer efficiency and loss of overall efficiency, so that the equipment costs more to operate. Are intimately involved in almost all of these applications. Again, the primary need that the data center has is to remove heat. And sometimes the airflow movement is higher in a data center than it may be in an operating suite. To give you a general idea, the typical commercial facility, the number of air changes, where if you're sitting in a commercial office, an insurance office or whatever, is going to be about 2 to 6 air changes per hour. When you're in a hospital operating suite and they're trying to keep the air clean and bring in clean air constantly, sometimes the air changes can be 30 air changes or even more, depending upon what the operation is. In the case of data centers, because of the amount of heat generated, it can be 30 to 50 times changing the air just within that individual room. And of course, what they're interested in doing is protecting the sensitive electronics. As an example, some data centers still use drives, but most of them are solid state devices now. We all remember the days of that floppy we used to have to stick in and out of a machine. Now we're getting hundreds of times the volume of data just on a little stick we plug into the side of our computer. Well, data centers are similarly along those lines, and they use solid state devices with basically kind of kidding around a little bit, but you put the federal budget on probably one little module 6 inches wide by 6 inches wide. And to these data centers, the downtime is extremely costly. Now, of course, they've got redundant systems and they've got backup systems, but even a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes offline can be extremely costly to them, if not in loss of data, in loss of reputation, because everything today is, I happen to be better than the other guy running the cloud. It can also be debilitating. I mean, you can imagine if a credit card processing center, which is another type of place that would be considered a data center, you can imagine if that went down for 10 minutes and the effect that would have in retail locations such as Walmart or your local grocery store along those lines. Now, what type of filtration is used in these facilities? Believe it or not very high level. In the olden days, when as little as 10 years ago, many data centers actually had to use real HEPA filtration. As a matter of fact, when they used to make the CDs that you stick into your DVD ROM drive or you listen to in your car, those used to be made in the clean room. Well, they're not anymore because technology has really moved ahead quite a bit, and the components have become much more capable of withstanding common contaminants in the airstream. But at the same time, these contaminants must be removed. Now, the 3 most common items that are used in data centers would be something like the Camfil 3030. It's a pleated filter that's either a 2 or 4 inch depth typically, and it's the same filter that you may use in your home or is used in a rooftop in an office that you're sitting in for just typical air conditioning. It's an HVAC grade filter, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and it's very efficient for the particles that it wants to remove. It virtually removes 100% of particles over 5 microns in size. Now, 5 microns, 10 microns is the smallest particle that the eye can see. So we're talking about particles 1/2 of what the naked eye can actually see. In the 3030, it's virtually 100%. Does it have an effect on the smaller sub-micron sized particles that can also cause damage? No, unfortunately, it does not. It's a throwaway filter that needs to be replaced either on a 6-month or an annual basis, depending upon what the dirt loading would be in that individual facility. So if we want to go to higher efficiency, we would look at something like the Camfil Durafil ES, which would be teamed up with the 3030 and used in the same system. Now, the Durafil is capable of not only removing those larger size particles, but it will also remove sub-micron size particles. Well, why do we want to remove those sub-micron size particles, items that are smaller than 1 micron in size? Because if you have hundreds of thousands of sub-micron size particles, pretty soon they become larger particles and they can start causing damage. Camfil also has another product that's very popular in data centers, and that's the high flow ES. And the reason that that's become so popular is because it's one of the only filters out there that has a high efficiency that can be used without a pre-filter. So it removes the larger particles, and it also removes the sub-micron size particles without having to pair that up with a 3030. The Durafil should always be matched with a 3030, and of course you should always consult your filter supplier to make sure that you're applying the filters properly. The other thing about the three products that were just mentioned, important to data centers, is that they have a maintained efficiency over time. In other words, they won't lose efficiency like some filters that are constructed of different components. And typically those different components would be filters that rely on an electrostatic charge. Normally you're only going to see them in residential application and not critical applications such as data centers. So you always want to look at a filter that has a maintained efficiency where you're really seriously interested in protecting a product. Sometimes that product is electronic information being transferred. Sometimes it's human health that's involved. So Camfil always believes that you should have a filter that maintains efficiency over the time that it's in a system. In some data centers, they even use carbon. They're worried about gaseous contaminants or corrosion actually getting into the solid state drives and breaking down those drives over a period of time. So where there may be a corrosive atmosphere, and that may be something that's introduced from the outside. It could be that the data center is either in an urban area or maybe there's an industrial process next door, and they're creating some type of contaminant that will break down the components. So a lot of data centers will also apply carbon, which is very good at removing molecular contaminants or gaseous type contaminants. Some of those things might be sulfur dioxide. Another one that may cause damage over time is ozone, which is prevalent in any urban atmosphere. It's dangerous to components, also dangerous to people. So again, who's ever operating the data center should always seek assistance in applying carbon or high efficiency filtration. Well, how do you make a decision as to what filters to put into these types of facilities? The Camfil LCC will tell the story. Now, what is LCC? LCC stands for Life Cycle Costing Software, and it's software that was developed by Camfil going all the way back to the 1990s, and it's based upon thousands of installations, laboratory tests, what we call in situ test, which is just a Latin term for in-place air filter testing, where we actually test filters on site. And it's literally got thousands of applications that have been put into this data software. And you can look at an individual facility, feed the information in, such as the number of air changes, the amount of dirt that's in the air, the dirtiness of the ventilation air that's being brought into the building, and the cleanliness level you want to maintain. And this software will actually do all the work up front and tell you what are the best filters to apply, because there are many filters out there and every filter serves a purpose, but every filter can't serve every purpose. And then the other thing that data centers find critical is they use a lot of energy. In many cases, there's specific electrical lines that have to be brought in just to service the area, because to keep those solid state drives running, or even the older type drives running, it takes power. So if power can be limited within the facility, that's always a positive, where you're talking about a data center, your home, or a commercial building, or even a school. The LCC will give you an idea of selecting different filters, and the change between one filter and another can be enormous. Selecting one 24-inch by 24-inch 30-inch deep filter over another 24-inch by 24-inch by 30-inch deep filter can be as much as $90 a year per filter per hole. And that's a big number if you're talking about data centers that may use hundreds of filters within their facility. Another option that Camfil has to help the data centers out is our cam cleaner. And probably the one that's most applicable, because there are two of them, a horizontal one that can be hung from the ceiling and placed at multiple strategic locations around the facility to remove contaminant, or a vertical one that can be put in a specific room or a specific area that may have problems. And that one is capable of not only removing particulate, but also removing gaseous or corrosive contaminants that may harm components within the data facility. Now, I realize that I've covered a lot of information, and data centers are extremely interesting as articles, as this is a growing industry, and you see articles that are showing up in Time magazine and some of the other ones that are out there. Spend a little time reading the 2 or 3 pages and find out what's making our world tick, literally through iPads and iPhones, etc. If you'd like more information on data centers or some of the products that I've talked about, you can always go to camfil.com or camfil.us and search within our website and look at industries at the left-hand side, and there's plenty of reading material there, and of course you'll also find the Camfil products. We also have a Facebook page where we put information that's interesting to end users, and we have tens of thousands of people that are members of that Facebook page that maintain their interest in air quality, and data centers are something that every once in a while there will be a thread that pops up and talks about the problems specific to that industry. I want to thank everybody for joining me in this call today, and hopefully I've generated a little bit of interest out there, or if anything, piqued your interest so that maybe you'll look into this a little bit more, and we all understand the technology that's helping us move ahead in this world. Thank you.